Hi, everyone. My name is Donny. As you know, every Wednesday at 2:30 p.m. Swedish Central European time, I go live with a fun or cool or interesting kinder egg of that, guest, tech, company, whatever it could be. And today I am excited and so very humble and thankful to be joined by Katrine.
Hi.
Katrine Marcal, the author, and I knew you as a journalist first because I've been reading your columns in Dagens Nyheter from the UK, and then you published a book, and I have to admit that I haven't read your previous book, but this one caught my attention because I'm very interested in innovation history, and I spend a lot of time talking about innovation. So I had to buy this book, and I love the Swedish title, which was Att uppfinna världen. It's inventing the world in Swedish, but I know the English title will be Mother of Invention, which I think is a wonderful, much better title in English. There you go. Is it Mother of Inventions or Mother of Invention?
Mother of Invention, I think, yes.
Okay, so yes. I spelled that one wrong as well.
That's okay. That's okay.
Don't worry, I'll change the spelling. Anyway, and I've got tons of questions. I hope we're joined by lots of people here as well that will ask us lots of questions. But just to get everybody on the same page, again, now I'm saying hi to some more viewers online there. My name is Donny, every Wednesday, 2:30. There, enough of that. And as you might see, I do work at KTH Innovation, and KTH being the biggest tech university in Sweden. So that's the self-promo thing done. So, Katrine, so happy to have you here. The book. Let's give. Oh, there it is. Yeah, perfect. I downloaded an image of it just so we could. But this is even better. It's the actual book. I'm really happy to have read it. It was very frustrating and annoying.
Oh, great to hear.
And that probably is. That probably is a good. That probably is a good thing. It probably means that you've actually, reached a part of your goal there. And I know that you've been in countless interviews, and everybody's been asking you questions about the book. I would want to start by asking you about the book itself. The inception and the idea for the book. How did you sort of come up with? What was the sort of the serendipitous moment when you went, I need to write this book? How did it start?
Well, I guess as somebody studying innovation and ideas, that there very seldom is one moment when an idea sort of just comes to you. It tends to be more complicated. But for those who don't know me, so I'm a Swedish journalist. I work for Dagens Nyheter. I have a background. I tend to write about economics. I've written a previous book in feminist economics. So that's where I came from. I was interested in innovation, in doing something around women and innovation. And then I started thinking about wheels on suitcases and the fact that, this is the famous sort of mystery among economists about innovation, the fact that we didn't get wheels on suitcases until 1972. The patent, how come that we managed to put two guys on the moon before we managed to put wheels on suitcases? And many economists have weighed in on this, and there's lots of ideas about it. For some reason, and I actually don't remember how, I started looking at this firstly by just going through newspaper archives here in the UK where I live, and started finding these pictures of actual suitcases with wheels from way before the official invention of this product. And what all of these pictures had in common was that it was always a woman pulling this suitcase. And all of these suitcases with wheels that existed in the 1940s and the 1950s, before this product was officially invented, it was a niche product geared towards women. And this made me think, and I started studying it, and I found this quite surprising answer to why it took so long for us to put wheels on suitcases, which was that wheels on suitcases was considered unmanly. And even after the product was invented in the 1970s, American department stores didn't want to buy it because they just thought no man will ever roll a suitcase. And women who've had these type of suitcases before were not considered to be a big market because a woman always travels with a man. She doesn't travel alone. And this product only took off in the late 1980s, really, when gender roles started to change and also the labor market changed. More women went on business trips alone. And very, very quickly, this completely disrupted the whole global luggage industry. But the reason why it took so long, I found, was because of gender roles. And then I thought, oh, maybe that's the book. Maybe there are more examples of sort of innovation being held back by our ideas about gender. And there was, and it's a book.
The actual, okay, there's so many questions in that statement that comes up now. But so you're saying that, okay, even though the idea of a suitcase on wheels, I mean, that's been like, maybe an obvious thing, but since it was considered,
yeah.
Yes, thank you. To be a woman's thing or a girly thing, no man would ever pull a suitcase. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of the main reason for it not becoming something that we now. I mean, today every business traveler in the world, well, when we get back to traveling again, pulls a suitcase behind it. So you make the argument that the gender sort of, I don't know what to call it then, the issue, the problem, whatever, is just so big that it even stopped the invention of coming up and being used.
Yes. Or becoming such a big thing, because they did exist.
Yes.
Suitcases on wheels. I have, very weird pictures from the 1940s of like suitcases with long sticks and then wheels, sort of. Different constructions. And there was certainly a product called the portable porter, which was sort of these straps with wheels on that you can put on your suitcase. That was invented here in the UK. And that existed, but it never sort of became a very big thing. And there even were sort of some suitcases with wheels, but they were marketed only towards women, and they never caught on.
Yeah, and of course, since women didn't travel by themselves, it didn't really become I mean, I know that, and that was the starting point. And when did you sort of feel that this was becoming a whole book?
Well, I had some idea previously about doing something on, I don't know, like technology and the economy and gender, just because, even if you're looking at the economy, it's so very clear in the last 15, 20 years that sort of it's not Wall Street that's the center of the global economy. It's kind of Silicon Valley and everything that stands for. So doing something feminist on the more innovation economy was an idea I had. But then when this story came to me and this research, it sort of became practical enough, because I really wanted to do a book in a sort of a mainstream genre, like a Malcolm Gladwell type of book, a book full of entertaining story that's, insightful, hopefully, but also very entertaining. So I needed those sort of things for it to become a book.
And I mean, okay, so I've read the book, and I must agree that you've managed to do all of that. It was a really good read all the way through. As I said, even though, my frustration in reading it was, but like, how could we be so, why have we not, that kind of frustration in a good way. I usually, I joke a lot when I talk about both innovation and startups, and I say, most of my own projects start by me being really frustrated, and that's sort of when I cannot find what I'm trying to buy made by anybody else, then I go sort of, oh well, then I have to do it myself. And then that's sort of when it starts. And I felt that this frustration I read in the book was, of course, the first thing I said was, I have to talk to this person and get her on my call, because this is fantastic. And I'm going to use this book in all of my lectures on innovation as well. So it was really good. And I'm looking forward to also inviting you back to the university at KTH to talk to the students here, because I think that you have a lot of good things to say. More questions though. I know that you spoke about the wheels on the suitcases, and you take up the spacesuits and a lot of things. But I went in towards the end of the book, you talk more about societal shifts as well, and the way we see how gender also affects which kind of jobs. You mention it when you talk about computers, and the first lecture on computers, as you say, was, and they measured the computer power by.
Yeah. So my mother was a programmer, and so I've always been fascinated, because even I remember as a child when that was the profession, there was quite a few women in it. I remember my mum's managers coming to our house, and they were all women. And then the whole sort of image of what a computer programmer was shifted, and we forgot about that part of the history of this profession. And obviously, the first computer programmers were women here in England during the war. And I have a chapter in the book which is called something along the lines, what's the difference between girl power and horsepower? And that alludes to, as you say, the first public lecture ever given on computers, which was at the University of Pennsylvania in 1946, when computers went from being like a secret military project to something that people needed to discuss. Are we going to keep building these machines even now when it's peak? What's the economic value of building these machines? And that's what this first of the famous Moore School lectures were about. But when I went and read it, it struck me how the professor in question, he measures the estimated economic value of these new machines in girl years and girl hours. And why is that? Well, it's because the jobs that these new machines were going to come in and take over were jobs and calculations that were at that time largely done by girls, which were their own category on the labor market, because they were assumed to be girls because they were not yet married, so they still worked for a living. And obviously their wages were set lower than men's wages. And therefore, if you wanted to have an accurate calculation of how much money you could save by buying one of these computers, of course, you had to calculate in girl wages, which were lower. So it was in the same way that you measured an engine in horsepower. Computers were measured in girl power.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do make that point. But what you say in the end of the book, I do talk about now and the future, because it's much easier to look back at other examples I have in the book, like the electric vehicle, and why electric vehicles were considered to be feminine in the 130 years ago when they were first invented. Or, we can see that very clearly how ideas about gender held us back in the past, the wheels on the suitcase, etc. It's much harder to see how ideas about gender shape our thinking today and how they might hold us back.
And it's fascinating to see. It's just like horsepowers that we still use today, even though there is actually a technical term for the power of an engine. People still talk in the terms of horsepowers, which is an incredibly primitive way of seeing a power, because, as you say as yourself, the difference between horses is, but one favorite part of mine in the book, I think, is when you make the point, and I'll just say to the people that are logging on here as well, I'll just say, welcome to the Wednesday Innovation Fika. We have our coffee here. We're having a cup of coffee together, me and Katrine. Please post questions in the comments here under the feed, so we can do some questions as well. We're getting some comments in as well here. Coming back to the book, in the end, when you make the point that in the future, maybe we will have to ask, we have to attract women to apply for jobs in the male-dominated caretaking jobs. And I love that one. And it was like sort of, wait a minute, what is she talking about? What? And I love that part.
Yeah, thank you. No, so I'm talking about, what many people call the second machine age, right? So the first machine age was in the 1800s. Where when new inventions came in, profoundly reshaped the economy and the labor market, led to lots of social tension, maybe of many of the big sort of ideologies that have sort of shaped the last 200 years sort of came from that moment, very, very dramatic. And now many people say that we're in a second machine age where automation and artificial intelligence will come in and have as a profound shift on the labor market and for the economy as ever was the case then. And I talk about something that is actually a little bit hidden in many of these studies that have been coming out from economics departments in the last, 5-8 years, about how many jobs will be taken over by machines, and the numbers they estimate everything from sort of 48% to 9%. So God created economists to make astrologers or pollsters look credible, but what's a little bit hidden in many of these studies is the fact that many say that female-dominated sectors of the labor market will not be as easy to automate as male-dominated sectors of the labor market. And that might not be true. I mean, we don't know. We're talking about the future, and nobody can predict the future. But I think it's still worth taking seriously, because what does this mean? Robots, artificial intelligence will come in and take male jobs, like from truck drivers to guys who work in finance, and the parts of the economy that are soon to be more resistant to that sort of development are care jobs, or jobs requiring emotional intelligence or caring skills. And it's also, if you think about not just jobs disappearing, but existing jobs changing, I mean, that's probably the more profound effect of technology, is how many jobs not disappear, but just change in nature due to technology. If you just think about how, your job has changed in the last 15 years due to technology. So it's interesting to discuss in what direction is this technological development pushing us. And I talk about it that it might really lead to skills like emotional intelligence, caring skills, etc., being the skills that we really need humans to do in the near future. And also those parts of the economy will be where humans still have a competitive advantage against machines. And what will that mean? Will the future, literally be female in the sense that these skills have been branded female?
I mean, yeah. Well, the guys would never admit that, of course. But I mean, I love that part as well, because if you look at all of the technological shifts, I mean, I'm old enough to have seen a number of them, and it usually starts with the engineers. They build something because they can. And then the only thing we can use is what they build. They're not building what they should. They're still only building what they can. And then it sort of comes into a hype phase, and everybody runs for it, and all. Today it's the venture capital starts running for it, and we can come back to that as well. And then after the hype phase, it sort of eases into hopefully a more moderate phase, and then it becomes more about the business. So then we get the management consultants coming in, writing books about it. We get the advertising agencies coming in, using it. Like when internet was the same thing. First, it was only, crappy homepages built by engineers. And then it became not until it became a business tool did it become big business. And the same thing with mobile. First, it was just, nobody took mobile seriously back in 98 or 99, more than talking on a phone. The apps, which were called programs back then, they were just, it was just games. And then suddenly Apple as well. Well, Apple democratized with App Store, making apps, and then it became big business. And then suddenly everybody's sort of in there. And I get the same kind of feeling when you're talking about the shifts in when you describe history and the future, when you describe the shifts that, when it becomes big business, then the big guys run for it. So when the EQ and the caregiving part becomes hot and big business, and that's when it becomes suddenly will become like a male dominated thing.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean that's the argument. But I will say also that I think that the argument you make very nicely in the book as well, which I think was my my very positive feeling as well was that it wasn't about, I mean, it's not okay, my interpretation. So, not male, female battling it out. It's, it's not about, is it males or is it females? It's like, we need humanity in on this,
Yes.
It's not about, yeah.
I'm very glad that you got that, because that is very crucial to me, that is the message of the book, because that is what I believe. And many of sort of the heroes and the stories I tell in this book are men, even white men. For example, the chapter on the moon suit, the suit that Neil Armstrong wore to the moon, which ended up being made by a company specialized in making of female undergarments, and it was hand sewn by female seamstresses, moved literally from bra production to moon suit production. And what was so innovative with this suit and the fact it worked was that it was, made in a soft material, which is often not considered to be as technical or as advanced because it's considered to be female. But it was literally the only moon suit that worked, and that NASA hesitantly had to sort of give the contract to, because the other ones just wouldn't work. But this was a company, ILC, that they were very innovative in the sense that they had engineers and seamstresses working together. The engineers had to take sewing lessons, sometimes for months. And there was a lot of respect between these two categories within the company. And they managed to really break down these barriers between, and this was in the 60s, so quite a long time ago. These barriers between what's considered sort of male technology and female craft. I mean, really, sewing should be considered to be technology, but it isn't. And they did that quite successfully. I talk about how they organized that, and how sort of the big boss there at the company would sit sort of night after night next to these seamstresses at these massive special sewing machines, helping her turn the fabric. So that's an example, I think, of an organization that broke down these barriers between what we say, this is male and this is female, and that literally took us to the moon. And that's why I like that story so much, because that is the message of the book. And even with sort of the robots, if it's true that they will come in and they will take over many male-dominated tasks and jobs, that will just give all of us an opportunity, hopefully, if we use this transition right, to become more human.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, yes. I mean, and that's, I love that message, because, and that's another question. I might have so many questions, and I see that, we don't have all that much time today, but did you come across any other, this is a lot about, male, female, and it's easy to feel it like this, like this side and that side. But have you come across any other, like age or ethnicity or anything like that? As you've been diving into this, there must have been a lot of other things that you saw there.
Yeah, and it becomes very clear, I think. I mean, woman is like the biggest category in numbers of, who've not been sort of allowed to invent the world, or whose ideas have not been taken seriously. But of course, there are many others. If you look at the financial system, which I do, I talk about that only 1% of venture capital in Sweden goes to women. But if you break that down on ethnicity or other things, it's even worse. So it's really, this is not just about women. I have a whole chapter on Aina Wifalk, who was a woman with a disability from Västerås, yes, who ended up inventing the modern walker, something that really has transformed life for so many older people around the world, but ended up selling her idea for just 2,000 Swedish kronor. So many people with disabilities, many ideas have come from that community, actually, which is interesting. And I think I do say something in the book about that. If the world is not created for you, then maybe it's easier to see how it can be improved, not just for you, but for everyone. I'm sort of putting that out there in the book. And yeah,
but I think it's okay, because this is actually one of the core essence parts as well, is that in my job, I greet anybody who comes through my door as a person with hopefully a great idea. You know, and I mean, it's something that even, you know, with unconscious bias as well, you know, you need to be very, very observant of how you react, because it's interesting how, and it's so interesting to see how we react, because nobody would say anything bad about Stephen Hawking, because I mean, he's this super smart guy that more or less helped us understand the universe. But in any other situation, you know, he would have been a disabled person in a wheelchair that, you know, whatever does he know about the universe? So, you know, it's so interesting how we decide on who has a good idea or not. And I just want to say, again, I want to say how wonderfully frustrating it was to read your book, because you point to these examples again and again and again. So, you know, I'll just say thank you again for that, and I look forward to, you know, hearing everybody else having read it as well. They did have a question here on LinkedIn. There's somebody that said the alarmingly low figure of the share of venture capital. You mentioned that as well. What reactions have you seen so far? Disbelief? No, I think that's kind of. Do people believe in that number? Do they know that it's not only 2% of the venture capital that goes to? Do they know that? It's just
no, I don't. I think people within the kind of innovation circle and in, you know, obviously in venture capital and private equity, they do know about this. I think people who read the financial press do know about it. The wider public do not know about it at all. And because this is a mainstream book, and, you know, I've been lucky, it's done really well commercially so far in Sweden. So I think it's been widely read. Yeah, thank you. It's been widely read, and people really, like you say, they do show a lot of disbelief. Can this really be true? So I do not think it's sort of public knowledge. And I think people understand that venture capital has become increasingly important in the last 15 years, but they do not know that, because it's such an extreme figure. And I mean, it happened to me in the past, obviously, when I'm at conferences and I've been talking about this, that there's somebody raising their hand saying, oh, but that's just because men have better ideas than women. And, you know, maybe, you know, we could at least entertain that explanation, but we can't explain such an extreme figure when we're talking 99%, 98%. It must have something to do with gender and gender bias. And that's an uncomfortable, you know, thought.
It is. And I mean, this is something that we live with all the time. And we ourselves, I mean, we have done our fair share of sort of self-scrutinization as well, to understand, why aren't there more women in our processes that we help and such like that. And we've also tried to sort of, understand the not only as, why is it only here, but what leads up to that. But that's the interesting part, because if we're going to change this, we need to look at what led us to this point. I feel as well. So with that, going forward, what's the remedy? How do we fix it? How do we work with this? Where do we go from now? Where do we go from here?
Firstly, so I mean, I know everybody who's read this book say it makes them angry or frustrated, and I don't understand that as the author, because I think it's a very hopeful message in this book, because it's also, I mean, it ends with climate change and, the big sort of challenge of innovation in front of us. And I think it's a hopeful message, because what my book shows is that all of these ideas we've had up until now, and all the innovation, that's basically just humanity inventing with literally at least one arm sort of tied behind its back.
Yes.
Just imagine what we could achieve if we released both hands. And I think that's a hopeful message that I hope people take away from this book. But I would probably point to the financial system, which I do think is responsible, and I do write about that in the book, sort of the logic of, who gets the money and why. And that does need to change. I think a lot lies there. And there's a lot of interesting experiments and projects going on around the world about different ways of different systems for funding. And I think that is happening at the moment, and it's very encouraging. It just needs to be scaled. But I think the whole discourse about, oh, we just need to learn women to pitch their ideas better or become more confident, that's not going to work. It's sort of, and I hope I show that in the book, that it's a whole logic about sort of what's considered worth investing in and what's not, that actually stems from the financial system.
Yeah.
But we could create a new one.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to make a probably bad joke about that. The people who end up only frustrated, they get so frustrated that they don't finish the book, because the book does actually end on a very, very good, positive, forward-oriented note. And I will just want to enforce that, saying the last, now finishing off here. Thank you again for being a part of this. Another question here that came up. Let's see what they said here. Wouldn't you say that it's because women have difficulty pitching their ideas? No, I'll chip in and say, no. It's got nothing to do with women being worse at pitching their ideas. Martin, hi Martin. Are innovations from women closer to market and closer to ROI, given the fact that they have been held down for ages?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I can't sort of point to a study showing that. And again, the message of my book is not just, women have been shut out from this. Yes, that's part of the message, but it's a bigger message about that we have, through the whole history of innovation, branded certain things, whether they were electric cars or wheels on suitcases or even roofs on cars, or these really random things have been branded female. Comfort, even in a product, was considered to be like a girl thing. The electric starter for cars was considered to be female. And everything we branded female, I mean, today a lot of sort of sustainability is branded as sort of a female concern, a female thing, and not taken very seriously when we create technology or innovate. And that's the real problem, sort of the randomness of us sort of branding things feminine and then not taking it seriously, and how that holds us back. But yes, obviously the exclusion of women is also a problem.
Yeah, I mean, and to Heloisa's point, she was the one that asked the question about the pitching part. Yes, of course, and that goes back to us. And I'm pointing to myself here, and everybody who works in any kind of innovation system or any kind of financing system. We need to learn how to listen. It's not about coming up with better ideas. It's about being able to listen better to ideas, which is, I'd say, the main thing. And as you point out in your book, it's not a male-female competition sport. It's a human sport that we need to compete in together, and everybody needs to be on board if we're going to try and aim for the UN 17 SDGs as well. And any chance of reaching them by 2030, with COVID putting us back 2 years now, we need male, female, boys, girls, old, young, everybody needs to get on board and help us fix this. And it's not a competition between us. We need to work together. We're all in the same team here. So, I mean, the people who work with things that I work with, we are the ones that need to improve in how we listen, I'd say. Hold the book up again. Let's show everybody what the book looks like. And I would just
looks like this.
I'll do some shameless promoting of the book here. It's available on all online bookstores, also as ebooks if you want to read it tonight.
Yes. But I think that's quite a quick delivery. But so this is Uppfinna Världen, and the cover is, we worked hard on the cover. It's a woman dragging her suitcase and wheels everywhere around here on the bike, on the dog, on the train, and but then not on the suitcase. It's right in front of her and she can't see it.
Exactly. It's beautiful. I mean, I love the cover. I love the book. Thank you so very much for being on the call today. And
please connect with me here on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So for everyone that's been tuning in now, this has been the weekly Innovation Fika with Katrine today, where we have a cup of coffee and we talk to interesting people. And I've been super happy and thankful for having such a distinguished guest with me in the studio today. This will be available on LinkedIn for later viewing as well. So please catch up with us after the actual live broadcast. Thank you everyone for commenting. Sorry we couldn't answer all of the questions, but it's been great having you online. Katrine, thank you so very much again, and goodbye for now, and good luck with the English version of the book.
Yes,
which
in
is going
June
to
next year. June next year.
wonderful. So 2021 is looking good.
Thank you.
Thank you indeed. Bye for now.